Okay, so hello everybody, welcome back to a new session on JavaScript, which is Advanced JavaScript 5. One second, just let me check if I'm live and then we'll get started with it, okay? So perfect, I think I'm live and let's get started with it, right? So, welcome back guys, good evening, and this is JavaScript, Advanced JavaScript Part 5. We have already done Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, and we have understood a lot of examples. We have understood a lot of advanced JavaScript topics as well, where we have seen about a lot of topics like callback queue, then event loop, and many other topics like that, which will be asked in interviews, right? So all those things we have understood in advanced JavaScript, all the part 4 sessions, and this is part 5 where we are understanding about some of the more concepts like polyfill and call, apply, bind methods, and some of the questions from JavaScript interviews. Like we have a currying topic which is very you know important to understand. So all these topics which is very important for your interviews, that's what we are going to discuss today itself. And this is lesson number 68. Do not get confused with the numbering in the lesson number. It will be correct in the playlist. So if you check the playlist order, it will be fine. Okay. Now, if somebody who is new here, then do let me know if you guys are new, and if you guys are no clue what is happening here, so just let me introduce myself, and also let me tell you what is happening here. So we are CodeBeyond by Unacademy, and we are providing this free course content on Frontend playlist, and this Frontend playlist is basically taken by me, who is covering all the languages and frameworks which is useful to crack an front-end interview, right? Or an interview for a front-end developer position. So that's what we are doing here, and we have already covered HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's just that we are now coming to the end of this JavaScript. So this is, I think, the last session of JavaScript, and then we are going to start Bootstrap. So today itself, I'm going to start Bootstrap. Now, if you guys want to learn Bootstrap, you can join me at 6 p.m. where we are going to start with Bootstrap. Okay. Now, let me introduce myself and let me tell you about some of the things about myself. Okay, so my name is Ritwik Raj and I'm a corporate trainer. I've also worked as a research analyst and a subject matter expert in most of the edtech companies. I have 3+ years of teaching experience, and I have trained graduates and corporate employees from Edison and Capgemini. I've trained more than 30K students till now. It is increasing day by day. Subjects which I take is mostly into front-end development, back-end languages, databases, and some tips and tricks on how to crack interviews. If you have never seen my tips and tricks videos on this channel itself, so please go ahead and watch that. There is a playlist which is called as cracking interviews, and in the cracking interviews playlist, I have you know uh, covered two actually parts, part 1 and part 2, where I've told about the tips and tricks on how to crack interviews. So that's what we have taken. Please go ahead and watch it. It'll be a real useful thing for you if you're a fresher or an experience as 1 year or 2 years of experience, right? I have a very good news for you now, that you can use my code which is RIT10 to get a free level sample test paper. And if you do not know about a level, do not worry. Just in 1 minute, I'm going to tell you about that. But if you have an idea what is the level, then you must be knowing that you have to give an actual test, right? So basically, to help you guys with that actual test, we are providing you this sample test paper which is free. You have to just use the code, and by using the sample test paper, you will have an idea on what kind of questions will be asked in the actual test, right? So that's why this is very important. Now, if you guys do not have any particular idea about what is the level, then let me just introduce it to you. Before that, just read the comment of Pranav N. So, hi Pranav, sir, please cover some more JavaScript questions which are asked in interviews. That's what I'm going to do today, actually. So, I'm going to cover some of the topics which are very important in perspective to your interviews, right? So that's what I'm going to take it. And also, if possible, solve the sample papers of Relevel. Yes, so I am doing that soon. In first week of December, by first week of December, I'm going to come up with 1 or 2 sessions on solving papers of Relevel. That is already in plan. I'm just working on it. I've already told this that I'm coming up with that session. So don't worry, Pranav, everything will be there. The whole full-fledged course will be there. Everything will be there in this particular playlist. Uh, it's just that it's taking some more time. So just give me some time and I'll be able to provide you everything, right? Okay, now let me just introduce what is Relevel to you, right? Now, if you do not have any idea what is this, then let me just, give you an explanation about this. So the reason of being opening this product by Unacademy is nothing but many a times candidates miss out on great opportunities, right? The reasons can be anything. Like suppose that there's one student who has done BSc, BCom, or BCA, and they want to jump into IT sector. They want to work in IT field. They have the skills, they have the talent, they have done some amazing products or projects, but still they have applied to 50 60 companies, and those companies are not calling them for the interview or for any kind of hiring positions, right? The reason can be that all the companies are looking into their degree, and because their degree is not B or BTech or not engineering graduate, that's why they are just rejecting them. And also we have seen that most of the engineering graduates are applying to 50 60 companies, and still they are not getting call back because of their college. So they are from tier 3 college, which is not so famous, and all the companies wants good candidates from good colleges, and that's why they just they have the skills, still they do not get any call. So because of these multiple reasons, we came up with this idea, which is Relevel. It is India's first test hiring platform by Unacademy, which is helping job seekers find their dream jobs. So you can get a job based on skill and talent. How you're going to do that? So basically, you have to give a free level test which is of 1,000 marks, okay? And 1,000 marks is too much for you, right? So in these 1,000 marks, we're going to judge you whether you are very good in one of the skills or not, okay? I'll just show you what are the skills, and then we are going to also discuss how to register for a level, and all of the things will be discussed now and then. So you have to choose a day of your choice where you have to give the test actually. And once you are scoring above 700 out of 1,000, you will be eligible for the profile. So we'll create a profile for you, and we'll send it over 50 plus companies, including top startups and unicorns, which are having 1,000 plus job positions across business development, front-end development, back-end development, and other positions as well, right? So suppose if you're not scoring above 700, then what? Then obviously you're not going to get eligible, but after 30 days you can reattempt the test again. So there is a possibility that you can get above 700 again after 1 month, right? So with Relevel, you are in a unique position to invite interest from companies instead of hunting for opportunities on your own, correct? Now let's understand how to register yourself in this. So basically in the video description, you can find a link which is given there. If you click on it, it will take you to relevel.com, okay? And once you reach there, it will be asking you for the mobile number. So you have to give the mobile number, you have to get the OTP, and after that you'll get into this page. And in this page, you have to choose the select of your choice. Choose the test of your choice. So whatever skill you have, let's say business development or front-end development, choose that particular test, and then you have to book a slot when you want to give the level test. So slots are limited, so I suggest to book it fast. And once you do this, you have to fill in the details for the admit card. So full name, email ID, birth year, current state, gender, and then you have to put down the coupon code, which is RIT10. Do not forget to put this, right? So please put up here RIT10 and click on apply. Once you create account, you will be having an account opened up where you will get the sample paper. Now once you download this sample paper, you will be able to get an idea which kind of questions can be asked in an actual test, and it will be very easy for you to solve those questions in the actual test. So if you have already registered for Relevel Unacademy, then go ahead and all the best for the exam. Go ahead and prepare for that. And if you have not registered yet, then go ahead and do it, because as I mentioned, slots are limited. And suppose if you're not ready for the actual test, suppose you're thinking that this exam is of 1,000 marks and I don't have so many skills, I won't be able to clear it, then what I want you to do is go and open CodeBeyond channel, check out the playlist. In all the playlists, you can find that some of the other educators are doing different domains, right? One of the person is doing backend programming, one of the educators is doing Python, SQL, CP, and DSA. Lots of things are going on here. So in 1 month, just prepare yourself and come back fully prepared. Once you're ready, then go ahead and register for A-level, right? So That's all about Relevel, and also please join the Telegram channel as well. You can find the link in the description. If you join the Telegram channel, you'll get all the notifications and update about the upcoming classes of which particular education is coming live and at what time with what particular topic. All the information you'll get inside the Telegram channel itself. So please go ahead and join it. Also do subscribe the YouTube channel, which is CodeBeyond, and please hit the notification bell so that you get an updated notifications in the YouTube app as well. Also, if you're liking this session, then please like and share with your classmates, fellow mates, or your colleagues, anybody, so that more number of people will get to know that these kind of sessions are going live and they are fully interactive and amazing. Okay, perfect. So let's get started with today's topic, which is advanced JavaScript, and we are going to understand polyfill. Okay, now before understanding polyfill or before understanding any particular topic, I want to tell you that this session will not be only for 1 hour. This session is gonna go for 2 hours. So plan your particular hour in that way, right? You do not have to just sit for 2 hours directly. If you are free, then only do that. Otherwise, this video will be there in the playlist. You can watch it anytime, okay? But it will be really good if you can join me with in the live session itself, because you can ask some doubts, you can ask some questions anytime in this particular 2 hours, right? So what all things we are going to understand in this particular session, let's first tell you that, and then we are going to start our session, right? So we are going to understand about call, apply, and bind method. We are going to understand what is polyfill. We are going to also understand how to write a logic for one of the methods, and we are going to understand about currying, which is a very very important topic asked in some JavaScript interviews. We are going to understand about what else, prototype inheritance. Many of you have told that prototypal inheritance is one of the topic which you want, so that we are going to cover. And with that, we are going to also understand debouncing if time permits. Okay, so debouncing is also one of the very good and very amazing interview question, which is very famous. So I'm going to cover that as well. And at last, we are going to do two projects, not on JavaScript, but on CSS, because these two projects I wanted to show you. The reason being, in the earlier projects, when I took sessions, I did not explain you these two projects as I didn't get time. So if time permits, I will be able to explain you these two projects today, and let's see how it goes, right? So let's get started with today's session, and let's understand one by one each of the topics, and we'll not be in a hurry because we have time. So we are going to cover everything in a slow pace manner. Okay. If you guys are watching the session, then please give me a like, and also please tell me that you guys are there. There are many students who are watching the session from starting for my sessions. So please give me a hi if you guys are there, so that I'll be able to know that you guys are watching this session as well. So I'm just showing you the browser, I'm just showing you the code, right? And here we are going to practice all of the problems. So I'm going to just create one a folder here. I'm just going to write here advance. Hi Lucifer, bro, I missed out videos from 10 days, dude. No problem. These all videos are there in the playlist, right? Go ahead and watch it. There's no hurry. I know sometimes work or maybe something else, right? So no problem. Go ahead and watch all the sessions. There's nothing new. Yeah, there are some things new which I'm teaching in here. So if you have not seen the earlier sessions, you won't be able to understand some of the things. But I'll try to make it as simple as possible so that you can also understand. Okay. So yeah, hi Jitender. Thank you for the ping. So let's create something here. Let's create two files. We don't need actually the CSS portion. So we are not going to create any file on that. See, I have been always creating one folder, and I have been always creating these two files here, right? It's not very important to do that. What you can do is you can just create one HTML page, and you can just create all JavaScript files as well. No matter what, however, you can keep these files, right? But for, it just depends how people like it to be. I like it to be in a folder way, so that's why I keep it in this way, because in a folder way, what happens, your all files can be in one place, right? Many other people, what they do is they actually put HTML, just one HTML, index.html, and then they put all different JS files down. So you can do that, but I prefer to do this because, when you're creating a project, when you're developing a software, you have to create folders like this. Folders are mandatory in any particular place, in any particular, working with any particular language. So let's get started. I'll read the comments. Don't worry. Just give me some time. Let me just explain some of the topics, and then I'm going to read out all the comments. Okay. So understanding. We're going to understand a lot of topics today. So I'm just going to write here understanding some interview questions. Okay. And I'm just going to include a JavaScript here. Fine. And let's get started with the code. I'm going to run this in my browser so that you can see the output as well. I hope you can see it, right? Understanding JavaScript interview questions. And let's get started with the code. Hi, Jay Sakshana. Bro, I'm not getting test links even after referrals. What could be the issue? You're not getting test links even after referrals. Okay, 1 second. Let me note it down. Even after referrals, that means you're using the coupon code. You should get the you should get the sample paper. Did you cover async and local storage and API fetching concepts also in your previous videos? I did cover async, await, and promises. Local storage also I have covered. API fetching concept, I think I'll be doing it today. So in debouncing, I'll be doing API fetching concept. So yeah, that's what it is, Lucifer. Perfect. So let's get started with the coding. Okay. Now, first of all, what we are going to do here is we are going to write a very normal, program here so that we can understand what is call, apply, and bind method. Okay. So if you have any questions, please do let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to just move ahead and do some programming. Okay. So let's get started with the code. Now here, what is call, what is apply, what is bind? These three functions are somewhat similar. Okay. And that's why these are all taken in one place, like what is call, apply, and bind. People will ask you what is call, apply, and bind. They won't ask you what is directly what is call or what is apply, not individually, because all these three functions are similar and they works similarly. Okay, so if anybody is asking you what is call, it's very definite they will ask you what is the difference between call and apply. Okay, so be sure that whenever you're understanding these concepts, make sure that you're understanding call, then apply, then bind, all three together. Okay, now let's say I'm just creating one particular variable here, which is person. Okay, and here I'm going to just say, let's say first name. I'm going to put up here Ritwik, and last name, put up here Raj. Fine. And as you know, what I'm writing here is an object, correct? So person is a reference variable which is acting as an object because I have key and value pair, and whenever in JavaScript we create an object, we have key and value pair. So I'm going to, okay, do you suggest Axios or Fetch API? Fetch API. Are you going to cover async await promises in your future videos, bro? Lucifer, no, because I've already covered it. I've already done promises. You can see here some files are already created about promises and all. You can see here for promises I have already done, and async and await, everything is explained here. So I suggest you to go and watch this session, which is I think Advanced JavaScript part 3, right? Go ahead and watch it, because in this itself you'll be able to understand what is promises, async, and await. Later on in any of the videos, I'm not going to cover these things because it's already done. So I'm not going to waste any time in that. Later on, I'm just covering jQuery or Bootstrap and Tailwind CSS and React. So this is on my plan. Again, I'm repeating. I'm going to cover Bootstrap, jQuery, Tailwind CSS, and React. Okay. So as you know, in JavaScript, whatever we create is an object, right? And everything is an object in JavaScript program. So right now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just let's say I'm creating a particular function which is full name, and we can write function like this. These all things you have done already many a times, so I'm not going to repeat this. What am I writing? Console.log, and here I'm going to just write this keyword, because you know what is the reason why I'm using here this keyword. These all things have been explained to you. So I'm just using here a space and just going to write here this last name. Fine. So now what I'm doing is I'm just particularly using a function full name where I'm printing first name and last name with that object itself. Now suppose, let's say if I'm calling this particular function which is full name, so what's going to happen? It's going to give me the output, right? It's going to print something in my console. So let's check out. Okay, so there is one error. Yeah. So the problem is I have used person, but I have not used the object name to call the function. Obviously, I have to use person.fullname. If I save this, I'm going to get here Ritwik Raj, right? So it's a very normal thing which we have understood, earlier in JavaScript sessions. In very of the first topics, we have understood how to use this, right? Now, let's say I have another object. Okay, let's say I have second person 2, and let's say I'm just going to write here his another first name, because he is a different person. So I'm going to write his name. Let's say I'm writing here Lucifer. Okay, and let's say I'm writing a last name also. I don't know your last name, Lucifer, so I'm just going to mention simply thing. Okay, and I'm going to write here. So here now, if I need to print its full name, his full name, what I have to do? I have to again write full name, the whole function. But again, you must be knowing that in one of the sessions I have told you that if you are repeating your functions, that's not a optimized code, right? Because full name function is already there somewhere in my program, right? It's already here. So can I use this full name function with this object? Can I do that? Because I don't want to write that same function again in my program, because that's not an optimized code. So let's say if I'm writing like something like this, person2 dot full name. Okay, if I'm doing something like this, what's gonna happen? Let's save this and let's go back to my browser. So you can see here it's giving me an error. It's giving me that person2 dot full name is not a function, right? So why is it telling me that error? The reason being, person2 is not having that particular function. That's why person2 is not able to find what is this full name. Okay, now this concept is called as function borrowing. So what is function borrowing? Basically is that one function you have to borrow it from another object, right? So we can borrow function from other objects and use it with the data of the same other object. Okay, so we can use this function of this object in here, and we can run this program. Okay, so how do you are going to do that? So here what we have to do, let's say I'm writing here name dot full name, right? So here, let's say what I'm going to do is call, and person dot full name dot call. I'm going to use call method, and I'm going to use here the second person object. Okay, So I've used here person.fullname.call person2, right? Now let's try out what happens. So if you look here, it is saying uncaught reference error, cannot access person2 before initialization at script.js part 9, right? So that means my code is wrong. Let's have a look once again. So yeah, so this will come here basically, and let's comment this. Okay, now if you look here, we are getting the output Lucifer Singh, right? So basically what we have done, we have used the function full name function in our second object, and we are calling that up so that the output can be presented. Now understand, person.fullname is saying that I'm using the person object's full name function, and I'm saying that call this with person2 object. So you can use this with person2 object as well, right? That's what is happening here, and that is what call function does. So function borrowing is nothing but call function. What does it do? It basically borrows function from other objects and use it for the current object, right? So that's what is function borrowing, and that's what is your call method, right? Now let's say what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the same function, but this time, so we have one function which is here, which is having first name, last name, and full name, and here we have one more function which is person2, right? So let's say in this function I'm going to pass something. I'm going to pass another parameter. So let's say I'm going to put up here age. Okay, so this is the parameter which I'm using, and here what I'm going to do, I'm going to just type down aged with age. Okay, so that is what I am passing here, function age. Okay, and next what I'm going to do, let's so first name, last name, person.fullname.call name, let name let person2. Okay, I'm going to mention here one more thing, person dot call okay. Let's do one thing. So this function, we are going to take it out from here, and I'm going to put it inside a variable. Okay, so I'm going to just cut this from here because I want to make this object separate and the function separate, because the matter here is that person dot full name dot call person2. Person is an object, person2 is an object, but when you come to full name is another function. So let's do one thing. Let's create another variable for this or function for this. Let's create another function for this itself. So I'm going to just write here let full name, and I'm going to create a function, and here let's say I'm going to put up the same things. I'm not going to use any parameter right now. Without parameter, let's see how is it printing, and then we are going to use the parameter. So let's say console.log, and here I'm going to put up this dot first name, and with that some spaces, and with that I'm going to just put up this dot last name. Okay, this is what I have done, and if now you can see here, so we have used this person object, we have used this full name which is having the function, and now we need to, let's say we want the person object to call the full name. So what I can do, person dot full name. No, let's say person dot, one second, full name dot call, because we can see here that's how you have written, right? Full name dot call. So first the function name and then the call and then the object name. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to use this time only person, okay? Because see, I'm not using the person dot here because it's now separated. The full name is not a part of person. The full name is separated. So that's why I'm calling like this. Let me just comment this for now. Okay, let's save this and let's check out what is the output. So if you look here, we are getting Ritwik Raj. Why I'm getting Ritwik Raj? Because this full name function I've kept it separately. This is not inside person, okay? But I want to try joining these two things using call method. What is call method? Call method is saying that basically it borrows function from other object. So it is borrowing function from this part because this is also an object, right? This is also an object. Full name is also an object. Everything, whatever you create in JavaScript is an object. So basically it borrows function. It is borrowing this function from this object and I'm using it in this object, right? Now let's try it out in this person2 thing, okay? So here also we'll do the same thing. I've just created this let person2 and I'm going to remove this here because this is not a part of that. And I'm just going to write here person2. So full name dot call person2. So now the output will be two things. One is Ritwik Raj and one is Lucifer Singh, right? Now what I'm going to do is let's go back and here I'm going to just mention age, right? So let's say I'm going to put up here an age. And here I'm going to print that. So let's say I'm going to write here aged and I'm going to just print up here age. Okay, I have to pass the value to it, right? So how can I pass this value to that? Okay, how can I pass the value? So here what you can do is you have the full name dot call person, right? Now what else you can do is you can add here one of the age let's say value, right? And so okay, now have a look what's gonna happen. So if I save this, you can see here what's happening. In both of the things we are getting Ritwik Raj aged undefined, Lucifer Singh aged undefined, right? Why I'm getting in both of the things? Now have a look. So if you look here in the code, I've written here age 25 and I've written here aged age, right? So this is the main function which is getting used here also and here also. While in person we have the age, but it's not going to print that. Can anybody tell me why? Because we have not written here. So now have a look. Let's give me some space here because it's very strict right now. Let's save this and let's go back. So you can see here Ritwik Raj age 25, correct? Now, but here down you can see still it's undefined, right? So let's do something. Here we have not written any age. That's why it is not coming, right? Let's say what I'm going to do here is how we are sending these particular parameters, right? We are sending it here, correct? These are the parameters which we are sending. So if your value, so if you're sending the parameters here, we are sending the parameter here itself, right? Let's say that I have some more parameters. Let's say I have a state, right? Let's say I have a state. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to just say here state and I'm going to write here, let's say Gujarat. Okay, and in this particular function again I'm going to put down here this dot, or let's just give me one space. This dot Gujarat, okay, sorry, this dot state, right? So let's check out what is happening. Now here also you can see in the first one I'm getting Ritwik Raj, age 25, Gujarat. The second one I'm still getting undefined, right? Now let's understand why I'm getting undefined here. Obviously because in person 2 we don't have those things, right? But now let's say I want to present these informations also inside this, inside person 2. So how you're going to do that, right? So how you're going to do that? Now what else you can do here is that you can still have two different, whatever you're writing here, you can copy this and you can again paste it here. This is one thing which you can do, right? So if I save this now, you can see you have again 25 Gujarat here itself. But let's say Lucifer Singh is not age 25 and is not from Gujarat. Then what you're going to do here is you have to change the values here itself. So what you can do, you can pass different values in your calling function. Okay, so let's say if I'm writing here person 2, right, what I can do here is I can directly give the values here itself. So let's say I'm going to put up here as 27, and let's say I'm going to put up here the state name as Maharashtra. Okay, now let's understand what is happening. One second. Full name dot person 2. One second. Let me just erase that for now. Let me just erase this also for now. There's something wrong. I should have got 27 here. I think I am missing out on something. There's one parameter missing here, right? For person 2, 27 age. One second, guys. Yeah, so have a look. Now, what is happening here? So basically, what we are doing here is we are calling this particular full name function with an argument which is 25, and here I'm going to write age. So it's this 25 will go here and it's going to print age here. Okay, and the similar thing will happen here also, 27 and then age and age. Okay, the earlier what we told, we write this dot age. This means the current object. That's why it was not printing that time 27. Again, let me explain this. So let's say if I'm writing here age and I'm writing here this dot age, what's going to happen? Only the current object will be taken up, right? But right now what I'm doing, I'm not writing this dot age. Instead, I'm passing out the values here. So I'm writing 25, and if I save this, I am getting Ritwik Raj age 25, Lucifer Singh age 27. The same thing now I can do for different different parameters, right? So let's say if I'm writing here state, okay, and here what I'm going to do, so let's say here I'm writing in state, right? Now let's say you have multiple arguments. When you have multiple arguments, so what you have to do, here the state will be obviously, let's say I'm passing it up here, let's say I'm not putting down the values here, and right now if I see this, right, let me just print it up also. So I'm going to just write here this much. You can see here what's happening. So I'm getting age 25 Gujarat, and the same thing will happen to here also. Right now I've not given any particular state there, so it's saying undefined. But In this case, what you can do when you have multiple arguments, in this case, what you can do is you can pass it as an array. Okay. So now in this case, what I can do, I can just put up this inside an array. Okay. And when you're putting this inside an array, this call method will not be used. We'll be able to use apply. Okay. Now what is this apply method and what is the difference between call method? The call method will have the first argument as the object and the next argument as the different arguments, right? The normal arguments which will be there in the function. But in apply, what is happening? The first argument is the object name and the second argument is an array. Okay, the array of all the arguments. So again, if I save this, you can see the same output is coming. Okay, so either you use call or apply. Just remember that in call, you will not have the second argument as an array, okay, grouped together. But in apply, we'll have arrays grouped together. So here I'm using call. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm using call itself here. So I'm going to just write here normally Maharashtra. Okay. Let's 1 second. Right. Okay. So you can again still make it here an array. So that becomes apply. You have to change this. You have to change this to apply and you have to change this to an array. So let's do that. Let me just check if everything is fine. So you can see here, it is working. Okay. So we are getting Ritwik Raj aged 25 Gujarat and Lucifer Singh aged 27 Maharashtra. So this is what is call and apply. Okay. Now let's understand what is bind. Now, if you go to bind, before that, what you understand that if you see here, what we have done till now. In short, use box brackets in apply and remove those brackets to convert it to call. In short, use box brackets in apply. Yeah, you can say that, but again, box brackets is nothing but an array. So mention that the second argument is an array. So this is what is call and apply. Okay, let's understand what is bind. So first of all, before understanding what is bind, let's understand what is the definition of it. Okay, so in bind, instead of directly calling the method, I'm just going to comment this. So instead of directly calling the method, bind method binds this, bind the method with a object and returns the copy of that method. Okay. So what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of bind method when I'm saying instead of directly calling the method, bind method actually binds the method with an object and returns the copy of that method. So let's understand that. Okay. I'm going to read the comments. Just wait. Crimson Cat 3. Please wait. I'm just going to explain this bind and then I'm going to read the comments. So in bind method, what I'm going to do is, let's say I have one particular variable, let sample equal to, right? And here what I'm going to do, okay, let's first say that I'm using the same particular line which I've written earlier, right? I've written full name dot apply, right? The same line I'm going to write. Let's say full name dot, this time I'm going to use bind and I'm going to just say here any of the object, and to that I'm going to pass some values. So let's say I'm going to pass here 27 and let's say I'm going to pass here Gujarat. Okay, this time I'm doing this. Now understand, when you're using bind, what's going to happen when you're using bind, this bind function, this bind particular thing which you're using is not going to get you the direct, is not going to get you directly the answer. Okay, right now what was happening when I was doing this, this was directly giving me the answer, right? because this was returning the function value. So whatever is happening here, it's returning the function value and then it's gonna print this particular thing, right? That is what was happening in apply. But in bind, what happens? It does not directly return anything. So it has to it has to return something to some variable. So what you do, we have to put down a variable name here. So this is something unique which is there in bind. So in bind, you have to put up a variable name inside which the whole result will go on. Okay. So let's say I'm putting up this particular variable sample, and let's understand what is happening when I'm printing this sample. Just sample. I'm not writing it as a function. Still it is a function, but I'm not mentioning that function. I just want to see what is there in the sample. So if I just save this, you can see here, it is showing me that the sample is having the whole function. The function, which function? The same function which we have designed, named as full name. Okay. So if you look at the code, this function is getting returned. This function is getting returned, right? So now what I'm going to do, let's say what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this function sample. Okay. So what I'm invoking, which particular function am I invoking? I'm invoking this function itself, right? So don't you think it's gonna print me the same thing which it was printing in apply or call? So let's save this, and you can see here it is giving me Lucifer Singh, age 27, Gujarat. This time it's Gujarat because I've written Gujarat. Earlier it was Maharashtra when I was using apply method. Now this is what is bind. So please understand what is the meaning of bind again. Instead of directly calling the method, see, I'm not directly calling the method. I am binding the method with an object, right? And then this is a copy. So in this sample, a copy of the function is present, and that copy of the function I am calling it again. So that's why this particular definition, instead of directly calling the method, bind method binds the method with an object and returns the copy of that method. So this is how the bind works. Okay. So hey, what will happen if we have more elements in the argument array than the required arguments of that function? What will happen if we have more elements in the argument array than the required arguments of that function? Obviously, it's going to give the error because you have not specified that many parameters, how many arguments you have. Always in a function, in any programming language, we have, if we are giving 3 parameters, we have to have 3 arguments, right? That's how the function works. So that's what will happen. Okay. Now, I hope you understood what is call, apply, and bind. Let's just repeat what is it, right? Why do we use call? So basically, if we have a particular object where we have a function, right? And we have another object where we want to use the same function which is there in the previous object. So then what we do not write or replicate or duplicate the function again and again. We segregate the function from the object and we treat it as a individual object. We treat the earlier object also as an individual object and the third object as also as an individual object. Now, whichever object wants to use this function, we are going to use apply method to use that. So we use the function name to be applied to which object with what argument. That's how we use the call method. In apply, what happens? The same thing, but in apply we do give the array here. Okay. So Rishabh is asking what is the difference between call versus apply. So I'm just writing here. Have a look. I'm just writing here. Now in call, see in call what is happening? It is taking 3 arguments, right? The first argument we know will be a object. Always remember the first argument of call, apply or bind will be the object name. The second object will be the arguments. So the second object is age. So I have put in 25 here. The third object is Gujarat. The third argument is Gujarat. That's what is the state. So I've written that. Now this is what is call method. Okay, this is what is call. Apply is when your arguments are collected in an array. So all the arguments will be inside an array. If you are using an array means the square brackets. I'm using an array. That's when you have to use apply. If you write call here, it will not work. So if I save this, you can see here the apply and the call both is giving me the same answer. That's the only difference between call and apply. But whereas if we come to bind, bind is a little bit different. So what bind does, bind also is written in the same manner, but it does not directly call the function. It uses or it creates an object, and in that object it gives the copy of that function. Which function? This function which is common to all the objects. So this function is getting copied to that particular object sample. Again, I'm saying object, understand that sample is also an object. This function is also an object, okay? Fine. So in bind, it directly doesn't call, it actually creates an object, and in that object, the copy of the function will go, and then that copy of the object, we call it. Okay, so we do not call the function directly like this in bind. In bind, there's a little bit more procedure, right? So this is what is your bind. Now let's understand what is polyfill. Now polyfill in general means the actual logic for any function. Okay, the actual logic for any function. That means let's say that you are using bind method. Okay, in your program you have used bind method, but when you're using the bind method in your program, your browser does not support bind method, right? So your browser will not be able to analyze what are you writing. Okay, now in that case, what we need to do, in that case we need to make sure that we make our JavaScript browser understand what is a bind method. So in that case, you have to write what? You have to write bind method ka actual logic, so that if the browser is not understanding what is bind method, I'll give them the actual logic of bind method. Then only JavaScript browser will be able to understand how bind works, right? So again, I'm explaining, bind method जो है वो एक predefined function है, right? Bind function is a predefined function. So its logic will be written somewhere inside JavaScript engine, correct? Now, if suppose JavaScript is not, if suppose your browser is not understanding what is bind method and is not working properly, then you can't use bind method. Then what you have to do? You have to write its own logic. You have to write a logic for the bind method. So that is what is called as polyfill, and that's what we are going to see. How do we write the actual logic? So in a specific situation where you will use bind instead of call, yes, I'm going to just show you where you will use bind instead of call. So in call, you are directly calling, but in bind, you are creating a particular object which will contain the copy of the function. So in some cases where you need to have a particular object where you need the copy of the function, that's where we need to specifically use bind. Okay, and that is the case which I will show you right away, how to use this bind in a normal way. Okay, so let's say I'm going to use the same thing here as well. I'll comment the previous code, and let's say I'm using the same thing again here itself. Okay, this time I'm not going to have any particular argument here. Right, and here I'm going to use this sample dot thing. Not going to print this console.sample, just this much. Now let's comment everything. Okay, and let's run this. Person 1, these things are not there. Yeah, so you can see here I'm getting Ritwik Raj, right? Now a polyfill, again, this is my JavaScript browser is understanding what is bind method, right? And that's why it is giving me the output, correct? So here my bind method is working, but if somebody asks you what is the logic behind this bind method, then what you're going to do? So how do we write the actual logic of this bind method? Let's understand. Now let's say if we keep any method in function dot prototype, right? You know what is prototype, right? We have learned about this prototype thing. This prototype is basically for any object we have this prototype, right? So if we keep any method in function dot prototype or in object dot prototype or in array dot prototype, then each and every particular function, array and object which we write has access to those methods, correct? So let's say if I'm writing here, I'm just making an explanation. I'm not writing a code. I'm just explaining what is prototype basically, because we'll be using prototype in our normal code when we will write the bind method called logic, right? So that's why I'm writing here function.prototype. So in function.prototype, if I'm writing function.prototype, what's going to happen? So if we keep any method in this function.prototype, how do we keep? What is the meaning of keeping? That means function.prototype, let's say this bind. This is a function, right? So if we keep any method in function.prototype, then what's going to happen? Then each and every method which we use or which we write has access to those methods. Okay, so any method will have access to that particular method, which is this bind. Okay, now why I'm explaining this to you, let me make you understand. Now let's say what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a function which is this bind. Okay, and this bind. Okay, now what is happening in this one? What is happening in this? So let sample equal to full name dot bind. Full name is this function. Full name is calling bind function. So maybe this bind function is written somewhere. If you can see, if you can read this, for a given function creates a bound function that has the same body as the original function. So this bind function body, this bind function code is also written somewhere, which is returning person, right? Which is taking argument as person and then returning something in back, right? So we need to write this bind function ka logic. So that's what I've done here. Understand that this bind function ka logic name, what I have given this bind. Okay, and inside this I'm going to write the whole logic. So this bind equal to function, that's what I've written now. And here what I'm going to do, let's say I'm going to say sample2 is equal to what was the function name? Where is the function name? Full name dot this bind, and then I'm going to write here the object name, which is person, and here I'm going to call sample2. So now have a look what is happening. So this line and this line is actually similar, right? This bind function is used, but bind function ka logic is not here, because bind function is a predefined method, and that's why I have written it directly. But here what I'm doing, I am using this bind function, and this bind function ka logic will be written here in this code. So this will work exactly like this. It's just that I have to write the logic here. So let's understand what is the logic which will be writing here. Okay, now here basically this bind function, whatever we have written here, this bind function will be having the prototype. Why will be having the prototype? Because as you can see, if we keep any method in function.prototype, then each and every method which we write has access to those methods. So let's say there is the bind method, right? this bind function, because there's a use of bind method, that's why it can access full name method, and that's why it can access person object also, right? So I need to make sure that if I'm using this bind, then this should give the access to full name to access this full name method as well. For that, what we have to do, we have to write here function.prototype. Again, I'll explain that. Don't worry if you have not understood. So what I'm trying to say here is, see, I'm using full name function dot bind. Why I'm using this function name with bind? Because I know that if I'm using bind function, this bind function will bind this function with the person object, right? So this bind function will get access to this full name function. We know that. That's why it is happening. But here, this bind function is of my function, and here I have not written any logic. So this bind function will not understand what is this full name. To make it understand what is this full name, which is also as a function, we have to use function.prototype. So what is this? If we keep any method in function.prototype, then each and every method which we write has access to those methods. So now all of these has access to each other and it can work directly. Okay. Now, as I told you that if we are talking about this bind method, it's going to go to the person. It's going to go to the person object and it's going to bind it with full name, right? But it also returning something, because when it returns something, it gets inserted into the sample. So am I sure that it is returning something? Yes, it is returning something. So what I'm going to return, I'm going to just write here return and I'm going to write here function. And I'm not sure what it is returning, but I'm sure that it is returning something, because that whatever it will return, that will come back to sample or sample2 in my case. So now I know that it's going to return something, but I'm not sure what it's going to return. Okay. So till now what we have done is we have made this bind as prototype function, so that if any particular function is linked with this bind, that function is also gonna get access to this bind. The next thing what we have done, that we understood bind function is going to return something. So that's what we have done. We have made sure that this bind function will also return something, but we are not sure what is going to return. So now what we have to do, what we have to think about. Okay. So if you look here, when we talk about bind function, is taking two things, right? One is the full name function and one is the person object. This person object can have any kind of data. It can have first name, it can have last name, it can have multiple arguments as well. So it can have any kind of thing, right? But the very first thing which we are writing inside bind method is what? The very first thing which we are writing inside bind method is my object name, right? So the very first thing which is written inside my bind method is the object name, correct? So can I write here call obj, let's say, right? Because we know that whenever we are using call, apply or bind, we know that the very first thing which will be there will be an object, and then the later ones are argument. We know this, right? So the very first argument is an object, right? So we know that, correct? Now instead of writing obj here, what we can do is we can pass here args 0. So args is an argument array for which the first element is the object, and in the parameters I'm just going to pass here args, because we don't know how many arguments will be there. So we used to write it like this, okay, triple dot args. So this is a group of array in which many elements can be there. I'm not sure how many elements will be there. It can be 3, it can be 4, it can be 5, and but the first thing will be args 0. Okay, so the first thing will be the object itself. Now we need to make sure that this is the object, right? So what we have to do, what we'll do here is we'll create a variable obj and we'll say this. So whatever is the current object, it's gonna go there. Whatever is the current object coming. So this time person is the object which is coming. So this person will go inside obj, and I'll just mention here obj dot call. Okay, so this person is the obj dot call args0. Okay, this is how it's gonna call. Fine, again I'm making you understand. So obviously this function will contain many arguments. First argument will always be the object, and the other arguments can be any number of argument, the normal argument. Now if you're passing any object, this object should be stored somewhere, so I'm storing it inside obj, and then we are saying obj.call args0. Okay, this is what we have written till now. Now what I'm going to do, let's say obj.this. Okay, so first argument we have covered, right? First argument we have covered. The first argument is the object. Now we have to also cover the other parameters. What all other parameters will be there, right? So in that case, we'll write here, let's say params. Okay, and here we have to mention what is this params. So these params are all the other things except the first argument, right? These all parameters are the other arguments except the first argument, because the first argument is the object. So for that, how we have to write args dot slice 1. Why slice 1? Slice 1, what is the meaning of slice? I have explained you this in the JavaScript part. In the string methods, I have explained you what is slice. So slice 1 means from 1 it's gonna count. The 0 element will be not counted. So params will have all the arguments which is coming after 1. So the 0th element will be the object arguments. That's what is gonna keep there. And now return function obj call, and now here we are going to write params. But now understand again, these params can be an array. These params can be multiple values. So we are not going to use here call, we are going to use here apply. Because in apply we can use multiple arguments using a square bracket. So that's what we have done here. Try to understand this once again. Otherwise I'm going to again explain this. Okay, let's do one more thing. Is there anything which is wrong? Just have a look in the program, in the logic, and we are going to also check if the program is correct or not. Any questions in this? Okay, now so here let's see why this is not giving me the answer. This should work, right? Once, let me just comment this. Okay, so this is giving me the answer. Let's comment this. Let's come back here. So there's an error here in the line of 50. So let's check out what is that error. Function.prototype this bind function. Okay, so I have not passed any arguments. I've written the arguments, I've written the params, but I've not passed any parameters. So let's say I'm passing here any parameter. I have to uncomment this because I'm using the function also. So let's say I'm going to use here state. And let's say I'm printing also the state. And I'm going to pass it from here itself. So let's say I'm going to pass it here as Chhattisgarh. Sample to Chhattisgarh. This bind person, where is person? Full name, function, state. There is a syntax error. Rest parameter must be last for a parameter. So I think there is some mistake in the code itself. 1 second. I've not made it an array till now. So let me just save this. Once again, guys, let me check the program once. I think okay. So I've just removed the params from there. Let's understand it without params once. Yeah, so here I'm not getting I'm getting undefined here because I've not passed here any of the state here. And here I should get Chhattisgarh. You can see here I'm getting Ritwik Raj undefined. So both of the codes are working. My bind method is also working, and this bind method for which I've written the logic, that is also working. It's just that the parameters is not getting defined properly, right? So let's check out that. In the script.js, as you can see here, we have written here this state in the function, but here we have not passed anything. So let's say if I'm passing here any state name, let's say again I'm just passing here Chhattisgarh. If I do that, I am getting Chhattisgarh here for the first one. So let's do the same thing in my this bind, and let's understand whether this is working or not. Let's remove this from here and let's do it here. But again, please make sure that this bind is only having one parameter, but I am forcefully passing one more parameter, which is the state. So obviously I think it should give me one error. So you can see here that it is still undefined, right? Why is it undefined? Because still it's not gonna go here because I've not given the params there. I've not given the parameters there, right? That's why it is not giving me the answer. So let's say what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the params there. Okay. So if I'm using the params here, it is calling argument 0, which is this person, and it is also calling the params. So if I save this, if I go back, you can see here it is telling me Ritwik Raj Chhattisgarh. Okay. But now let's say that I am passing one more value. So let's say that I'm passing one more value here. Okay. And let's say this is the city name. So let's say I'm going to just put up here as Raipur. And I'm going to put down here, comma, city, and here I'm going to just write city. Okay, so let's see what is happening now. If you look here, the first one is giving me Chhattisgarh Raipur, right? If you can see here, that's what I wanted. I've written Raipur here. That Raipur is getting obviously sample Raipur means this sample is already having one of the argument. Now I'm giving second argument in this corner, not directly in this. So obviously both are arguments. It's gonna print both of them. The first name, the last name, state and city. That's how it's getting printed. Okay. The next one, if you see in this one, how we are going to do. So let's say I'm giving something here as the uh, argument. Okay, I'm giving it here, right? Now when I'm giving it here, let's save this, and you can see here what is going to happen. It's going again undefined, correct? So again, it's not a proper code. So what changes we have to make? We have to use here, we have to call here function uh, two parameters. We have to use the parameters. So understand what is happening. This bind, whenever you're using this bind, is a function which is written here, which is calling this function. Okay, so it is taking these arguments, but the first argument is person and the second argument is the parameters. Okay, that's how this was working. But in this one, what is happening? It is having one more argument. It is having some more argument. Okay, we have given here only two arguments, but now we have the third argument. So it is not having any space to print this third argument. So what you have to do? We have to use here params. That's what I've told you. So this will take the first argument, which is the person, and the other parameters will be taken in this array. Whenever I'm giving dots, that means multiple values should be stored there. But in this time, what I have to do, because there are multiple parameters, so in this place, what you have to do, I have to create an array, because obviously this is containing lot of arguments. So I'm going to put down here params, or I'll take one more argument, which is argument 2, and I'm just going to give it here. Because why I'm giving it here? Because as you can see, I'm calling one of the argument here, Raipur, and this is the function calling. So this function is getting returned, right? This function should have args2. This Raipur will come to args2, and args2 will be the argument. This params is the Chhattisgarh, which will come here. Okay, now this is the logic for the bind. So if I save this, once again I'm getting an error. You can see here I'm getting an error. Let's check out. So obj dot, acha, yeah, I have not used apply here. The second argument is an array, right? So I have to use apply. Again, there is one error. Let's check out what is it. Sample to Raipur is gonna go there. Here gs0, comma, okay, this is fine. Why is it not working? Full name, rest parameter must be last formal parameter. Okay, I think it's the problem with IRGS and params. That's why earlier also it was not working. So function.prototype, this bind function args params spelling is right, correct? One second. Params args dot slice, okay, return function args2. So args0 and args2 is gonna come there. Let's try out calling only this and let's see. I think there's some problem in the code itself. Some code I've written wrong. Yes, it will. ARGS will come first in apply. Yes, obviously, because it's the first. I'm back. So in here I'm getting Ritwik Raj, Chhattisgarh, Raipur, Chhattisgarh undefined. Second function I am getting undefined. Try logging params and ARGS. Okay. Let's now try and let's now do it. So let's say I'm writing here Raipur. Yeah. So yeah, the problem was here I have written in the function. I also have given here params and I also gave here params. That will not come there. So here basically we have ARGS and that's all will be there. We have the params here where I'm assigning slice 1. So that's what will only be required. Now if I save this, if I go back, you can see here it is printing Ritwik Raj Chhattisgarh Raipur. Okay. So this is the polyfill for bind and this is the logic for bind. Okay. This is little bit tedious to understand, but let me just repeat it again what is there to let not you get confused. Okay. So again I'm explaining this. Okay. Now first of all you have to first understand how this bind works. So let me just explain it again. You have the person object. Okay, you have the full name function in which you have written some of these statements which you want to get printed. Full name is a function as well as an object. So what does bind do? Bind binds the object with the function. Okay, with the function. And it if it is having any parameters, you can take the parameters and it will give it to a particular object which is a variable. Okay, so in this case object is a variable in which the copy of that particular result will go, and now that function can be called and we can get the output. So bind function is basically to bind two things, one function and one other object. Okay, that is what bind is used for. Now how this bind is working internally? So this bind is working internally with two arguments. First argument will be the object, the specified object, and the another arguments will be all the different arguments which you want to pass. Okay, now this argument can be here also, or it can be in the function when you are doing the function call. Okay, so when you're doing the function call, what is happening? This Raipur is also considered to be written here. Internally this Raipur is also after Chhattisgarh, but we have called it directly in the sample function call. That is what it means. Okay, now if you want to write the polyfill of bind, then what you need to understand is that bind, whenever we are writing, first of all it is treating this full name as also a function. So it is understanding that full name is a function, right? So whenever we are writing this bind is a function which we have used as a bind function, right? So whenever this bind is called, we need to make sure that it understands that full name is also a function. To make it understand that full name is also a function, what you do, we have to write function.prototype. What does this prototype will do? If we keep any method in function.prototype, then each and every method which we write has access to those methods. So this bind is having access to full name method. Okay. Now after that, what we are doing? We are having two parameters here, right? We have your first parameter as the object and the second parameters can be any number of argument, right? So in the function we have arguments. Now in this arguments, the first argument will be the object name and the other arguments will be the params. Okay, so in this first argument, what we are doing, args0, we are just keeping it as the object name, and the other arguments we are keeping it as either parameters or either other kind of argument which will be directly called from here. Okay, so this Raipur is for args2. If suppose somebody is calling directly from here, that's where it's gonna go and it will be considered as parameter itself. Okay, so if suppose you don't want to write Raipur here, remove this args2 also from here, remove this args2 also from here. Only because anybody can call up argument from directly here, that's why args2 is required. and because it's already a parameter or an argument, that's why it is considered to be inside a parameter and argument. Okay, now why do we use obj? Because we are passing an object in the first place. So we need to make sure that whatever is the object name, the same object name is considered here, which is why you are using this, and it is given to obj, right? And now with obj we are saying that this obj will have the first thing as argument, which is an object, and the second things as a parameter, either normal parameters or the outside parameters. It can be anything. That's what we have done here. And because this next argument, the total argument, is an array, that's why we have used here apply. If we are not using Raipur, this args2 will also not come here, this args2 will not come here, this array will not also come here. So apply can be changed to only call, and still we'll get the answer. Okay, what is the meaning of this params? So obviously we have only one args, and this inside this args we have the extra arguments also and the first argument also, which is an object. So we are just making sure that we are separating those things. So you have separated args0 to be the first element and the other elements to be the params. So params is equal to args.slice1 means leaving the zeroth element. After that, whatever element is there from 1 till the end, those are all will be considered as params. I hope now it is clear. Writing the program, maybe you will get mistakes because there's a lot of new things here, and that's why you will not understand. But now I think you have got what is it. Okay, yes, so obj is referring to full name function, because see, what is the meaning of this keyword? If you're writing person refers to this whole thing, and this is what we are printing in the full name. So it refers to the total thing. Okay, fine. So this is what is your bind ka polyfill thing. Okay, now let's understand what is currying. Okay, so let me just comment this and let's write currying. Let's just comment this part and let's just comment this as well. Now talking about currying, let me just write one proper definition of this and then I'm going to explain what is it. So it is a technique of evaluating function with multiple arguments into sequence of function with single argument. What is the meaning of this? Now, as you can see, it is saying it is a technique of evaluating function with multiple argument. That means we have a function which will have multiple arguments. So let's say we have function show, which will have multiple arguments. So let's say a, b, c, d. We have multiple arguments here, right? But it's written into sequence of functions with single argument. Into sequence of functions with single argument. So it's not that all the arguments are inside only one function, but all different arguments are in different functions. All different arguments are in different functions. What does that mean? Let me make it understand in a better way. So now let's see what I'm writing. Okay, so here what I'm going to write is when a function, instead of taking all arguments, as I mentioned that in the example, instead of taking all arguments at one time, takes the first one, so a in my case, and return a new function. It returns a new function that takes the second argument. Okay, So when a function, instead of taking all argument at once, that means instead of doing this, what I'm doing, instead of doing this, it arguments take one time, it takes the first one, so it takes the first one and returns a new function. So it returns a new function which will have, that takes the second argument, right? So let's say show1 b. So it returns show1 b. Okay. Again, if it takes the second argument, so that takes the second argument and returns the third. Returns a new function that takes the second argument and returns the third function with third argument. And it goes on. And it goes on. If you want to explain it to somebody in your own language, what you have to say, that instead of writing a function which will have 4 arguments, what we want to do is we want to take the first argument and we need to call the function so that it returns the function with another argument, and then it returns another function with another argument. C. Okay, and then it returns the output or whatever we want to print. Okay, in this case we call it as currying. Okay, so it's currying one function and then it's the other function is currying the another function and it's currying the another function. This is what is called as the currying part. Okay, now to understand it in a more better way, what we are going to do here is, let's say in interview one question will be asked to you, that is something like this. So they will write something like this. See, all these concepts are really difficult to understand in first go. Okay, so if you're watching this video, if you're thinking that, you know, I'm not being able to I'm not being able to make it understand more clearly, you'll not be able to understand it more clearly in the first attempt. That is for sure. The time when anybody understand these topics, they have to watch the video and again. Okay, so you watch this video again and again from the starting, then only you will be able to understand what is happening here. Okay, and try to do this in your own Visual Studio Code also. Otherwise this is not going to make any sense if you're not going to do this together, or you're not doing this in your own way. Okay, so let's say this is the question which is asked, and the interviewer is asking what will be the output of this and how it will be run, actually how the code of this will be run. Okay, how this function calling will happen. So what is basically happen, is this a function call? Yes, it is a function call, but is it something like this? Is it like 3,6,7,9? Is it like this? No, right? It's not like that. It is not written something like that. It is something else, right? So what is it? How is it written? Why is it written like that? Okay, let's understand. So if this type of question is asked, what you have to say is, let's say I'm going to create a function sum. Okay, and I'm going to just say a here, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to just print up console.log, going to say a here, and then I'm going to just pass down one value to the sum. So let's say I'm going to write here 5, right? If I do this, what's gonna be my answer? We all know it's gonna print 5, and you can see here it is gonna print 5, correct? But now what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to write the same thing here. So let's say copying this and pasting it up here. Let's understand what is giving me. See, if I save this, you can see here it is giving me an error. It is giving me an error, but before giving the error, it is also printing 3. So that means the first function is working. The first part, like this much is working and it's giving me the answer. But the earlier part, the next parts are not working. 6, 7 and 9 is not working. So what went wrong here and how we can correct it? So in this cases, what you have to do, you have to use currying. Now what is currying? Currying says that you cannot call the multiple arguments at the same time, but call that one argument at one time, and the another argument will be called by the returning of another function. So this function is going to return something. Let's say I'm going to return here one function which will be having a b parameter. Okay. And now let's say if I'm printing console.log, okay, let's say I'm printing here a comma b. Let's see what is happening. So if you look here, you can see here 3 and 6. That means now my a and b is going to get returned, but the others are giving me the error, right? So how this 3 and 6 is getting repeated? Because 3, once it goes here, it returns another function which is having b, and that's where 6 comes in and prints 6 also. So 3 and 6 is getting returned together. In that case, what you can do, I can write here function, I can write here c, and then I can write here return, I can write here d, right? And in the next part, what I can do here is I can just write console.log. I can print all of the things, right? Now, let's say if I save this, what's going to happen? You can see here, it is not giving me any error, but it's giving me 3679. Okay. Now, this is what is called as currying. Okay. So what is currying basically? It is a technique of evaluating function with multiple arguments into sequence of function with single argument. Okay. So how it is working? First, sum 3 is getting covered here. Is there a practical use of currying? Yes, it is. I'm just going to show you that. After this, I'm going to show you. First, I'm just trying to explain you what is currying, because again, the next programs are a little bit hard. I'll get stuck somewhere. You will also not understand. So that's why first of all, I'm just explaining you in a simple manner, because currying will be used with different things. I'll be explaining how, but that will be a tedious program. So before going to that, I'm trying to make it easy. So this is what is currying. Okay. Now, we know that, if we have one single statement, if we have one single line, then we can remove this return keyword and we can remove the curly brackets as well, right? That's what we have learned, right? So let's say right now what I'm going to do, I'm going to first of all just write the sum of this, the summation of this. So a plus b plus c plus d, it's gonna give me 25, and you can see here it is giving me 25, right? That's how it's gonna run, and that's how it's gonna print everything, right? Now let's say what I'm going to do here is I have only one sentence, let's say. Okay, so I can remove the curly bracket, I can remove the curly bracket from here as well, and I can remove this as well, I can remove the function as well, right? I can have return, I can have d, and I can have here the arrow function. Okay, we can do this, you know it, because we have, if only we have one sentence, we can remove the curly brackets and we can remove the function keyword as well. Right now, if I run this, you can see 25, it's still we are getting 25 here, right? Let's go back again. Again, the same thing we can do for other things as well. So what we can do here is, let's say I'm not doing here console.log. I'm just going to write the logic here. That's it. But we need to do console.log somewhere, right? So what I'm going to do here is const, and let's say I'm going to just name it as summation, right? And to this one, I'm going to do console.log summation. So now it should work. It should give me the output. You can see here, it's still giving me 25. Okay, so it's still working. Now we have return here. Now this time what we want to do, we want to remove all the returns and everything, and we want to have only one single line for this statement. So we can remove this return from here, and we can remove this curly bracket as well. We can remove this curly bracket as well. We can just move above, and we can remove this function as well. But this function should be an arrow function for D function, right? So if I save this again, you can see here that we are getting the output. Similarly, what we can do, we can remove the other part as well. So we can remove this, we can remove this whole thing. We can give here a arrow function. We can remove this function. Let's save this. Still, we are getting the same answer. The last part, we can remove this curly bracket. We can remove this thing. And we can just write here this, and we can also remove this function. We need sum. Why? Because in sum, what's going to happen? In sum, we are calling this sum. So that's why we will have the sum. We're just going to write here const. So sum and then a. Okay. Now let's save this. Why I did that? Because sum was giving me error because I've written const, and const can only be used with the variables. So I need to make the sum as variable. So I've written this as variable, which is working like a function. That's what I've done. Now if I save this, you can still see 25. So the whole code is now converted into a single line, and this is also a currying. This is also the concept of currying. Okay. Hi Milind. Not in that way. Const a you cannot write. You have to have the function name, right? I'm calling the function name. This function name should be there somewhere, no? So I'm just using the variable name there. Okay. So this is how we have used our the currying concept, right? Now let's understand how we can do currying, or how we can do currying using two ways. This way, what you have used here is the closure way. Do you remember closure? Like we were having closure in which we have one function inside which we have another function, and then the nested function will have its own scope with the lexical scope, right? So that's where we called closure, right? So can we say that this line, when it was broaded, when it was written something like this, then it was using the concept of closure? Yes, it was using the concept of closure. Why? Because this function C was having its own code, and it was also knowing what B was having. The B code was also knowing that what A was having. So it was having the information of all its lexical environment as well, right? And whenever in closure, we say that whenever a function is having its own scope information as well as the lexical environment information, that's what we call it as closure. So this is what is the example of a closure. So currying can be done by two ways. Currying can be done in two ways. First using bind method, and the second using closure. Okay, so we have done it using closure. We'll now see how to do it using bind. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is, let's say I'm going to just write here, let multiply. I'm creating a function here which will have two parameters. Okay, and I'm just going to put down here the logic of this. Let's not say multiply, let's say sum. Let's make it more easy. Okay, and now in this one I'm just going to say x plus y. Cool, fine. Now what I'm going to do, I have to use bind. So what I'm going to do, because we have to use bind, I have to give a particular variable name which will contain the copy of that particular function, right? So I'm just going to write here 2 okay, or let's say first, and sum dot bind. I'm going to bind it with this object itself, with I'm going to use any of the one of the number, and I'm going to use I'm going to call first function. So while I'm calling this first function, I'm going to use another number. So let's say I'm using 5. Okay, let's see what's happening. Sum has already been used. Yeah, sum has already been used. Let me comment that. So here you can see what I'm doing. Sum is a function name which is currently taking two parameters. In the bind, the first is an object. Always the first parameter will be an object, right? So the first parameter goes here as an object, and then the second one is a parameter. So let's say the second one is a parameter, it goes to 2. What about y? Y goes from here. That's what we have learned in this code, right? In this code also, that's what we have learned. Either you directly give the parameter from here, or either you write Raipur here. It's gonna be the same thing, right? In bind function, what is happening? If you give it here, it's gonna go in this args2. If you give it here, it goes directly to this params, right? That's where it goes. So here we have written first 5. So y becomes 5 and x becomes 2. So if I save this, if I show me output, you can see here it's 7. So it's working fine, correct? Now let's say what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create another variable, let's say second, and I'm going to just say here sum dot bind this comma 3. Again, for the second, I'm going to just say here 7. So 7 plus 3, you know what it will be. And you can see here it is printing me 7 and 10. Fine. But now what I will do is, let's say that I'm writing here 2 comma 9. What will happen now? So as I said you, either you give the value here or either you give the value here, it's gonna consider any of them. But first I have given 2 comma 9. So it's gonna take 2 comma 9 and the output will be 11. So you can see here the output is 11. So what about this particular part? What about this 5? This is going to get ignored. This is going to get ignored, okay? This is going to get ignored. The next one, what we are doing is sum dot bind, and then we are writing this dot 3, right? So let's say what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to keep it this dot, this comma, and here I'm going to just say 7 plus 9, right? Now what's gonna happen? We have not passed anything here, but we have passed both the things here. So obviously x gonna be 7 and y gonna be 9. So let's save this and you can see here 16. Okay. Now can we say this is also occurring? Yes, this is also occurring. Okay. This is also concept of currying, but this currying concept is used as a bind method by using bind. So if anybody, any particular interview is asking you that, can you show me currying concept using bind method? So this is how you need to show them. Okay. Now let's take one more example of currying concept using closure. We have seen closure concept once already. Let's try to figure it out. If we have to use currying concept using closure in this function itself, then what we have to do? So in this particular concept, if we have to use currying using closures, then what you have to do? Let's say let sum equal to function. I'm just going to pass one argument right now because currying tells us that first you need to choose only one argument and later you need to return one more function with that function which will have the another argument. So I'm going to use return, and this time I'm going to return a function with y. Can I say it's a closure? Yes, it is a closure. And here I'm going to write down the logic. So let's say I'm going to write x plus y. Okay, so it's returning all the two things. And now I'm going to mention let 2 equal to the same way how I have written here. In the same way I'm going to write that. But this time I'm not using any bind function. So I'm going to directly call this function by only one value, let's say 4. Okay, the another value I'm going to just directly call it from here, 5. Sum. Yeah, so I need to comment this because I'm using it again and again. So here we have 5, here we have 4. This both is gonna go here. First sum 4, so it's gonna take the y value and then x value. It's gonna print everything and it's gonna 9. Okay, it's gonna give me 9. So this is one of the concept which is using currying concept using closures. This is what is called as currying. This is also currying concept, but using bind method. This is also a cunning concept, but using closure method. And this is a question which has been asked many times in the interview. This question can be asked to you in the interview as well. Okay, so please make sure that you know the cunning concept very clearly. Right, now that we have understood these all things, let's try to understand what is prototypal inheritance. Now there are two things. Prototypal, you know already what is prototype. So I have explained you this in the earlier sessions as well, that what is prototype. If any array, any object, any function, any variable we are creating, that will be having its prototype. Okay, it will be having its own prototype. Let's say if I'm doing function.prototype, so function.prototype will have its own prototype named as function. Okay, and that function will have one more prototype, which is object. Let me just make it easy for you. They have created a function. This function will have its own prototype as function. Okay, and this function prototype will have its own object prototype. See, everything in JavaScript comes from object, right? That we have seen already in my earlier sessions, that we have known anything in JavaScript is an object. And object, capital OBJECT, is also a very main or the head of JavaScript engine. Because of this object itself, everything happens. Even in your code, if I write here window, I have told you what does it contain, right? Window contains everything. Similarly, we have object, which contains the object method, right? Which contains everything of that object. Right, so these two things are very, very important when you talk about JavaScript engine, right? We have one thing which is window and we have one thing which is object. Now, so what we are understanding here is that there are three levels. The three level is when you create a function, above the function there will be a function prototype. Can you see the name here, capital F? That's what function prototype. This function prototype, इस function prototype का बाप कौन है, इस फंक्शन प्रोटोटाइप का पापा कौन है, पेरेंट कौन है, ऑब्जेक्ट प्रोटोटाइप. Right, that's how it works. So again, even if I say here, let's say if I'm creating a object, a normal object, right? When I'm creating a normal object, this object will have its prototype object, and that prototype object will come from object prototype. Similarly, if I have an array, what's gonna happen? This is gonna come from prototype array, which comes from object prototype. So everything comes from object prototype in JavaScript. Okay, so there are three levels: 0, 1, 2. Let me show you where is it. I will show you where is it, but this was an explanation of prototype. Okay, what is inheritance? Inheritance means the concept of accessing all the members from its parent, right? If a child is there, it will access all the members from its parent element, right? And the child will have its own element as well. That is what is inheritance, correct? So that's what we are going to do. We are going to see what is prototypal inheritance. Okay, so let's get started with it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is, let's say I'm going to just write here, let array or array1 is equal to, I'm just going to create some array here. Let's say one element I'm writing Ritwik, and let's say I'm going to put up here Raj. Okay, just this much. Let's save this. Let's go back to my code here. So here I've written one array1 variable, right, which is also acting as an object, right? But see here, array1, before I can say that array1 is an object, before array1 is an object, array1 is an array. So before it's an object, it's an array, right? So let's go back to the console, and let's say that I'm using here array1. Now when I use array1, it is showing me that it is having two data, Ritwik and Raj. But if I use dot, it gives me all these properties, right? These properties are not written in my code. I have never written these particular properties in my code. Can you see? I've just written Ritwik and Raj. That's it. But still it shows me all the properties here which can be used, correct? So from where these all properties are coming? These all properties are coming from the prototype of array. The same prototype of array which I have told you here. This prototype array. So I told you, right? All the arrays का जो parent है वो prototype array है. सारे एरेज का पेरेंट जो है प्रोटोटाइप एरे है एंड इन दिस प्रोटोटाइप एरे everything is there, all the functions, all the predefined methods, everything whatever you can use with array, everything is there inside this. Okay, so again if I go back, we can see anything with this, right? Anything. Okay, now let's say what I'm going to do here is I'm going to write here underscore underscore proto. Okay, now if I do this, can you see here what's happening? So it is giving me a list of all the methods and all the functions, everything, whatever is there inside this array 1. Whatever is there inside this array 1. So whatever you were seeing here, right? Whatever you were seeing in this place, these all things are there inside that prototype. Okay. Now, what is this double underscore prototype, proto and double underscore? This is just a name given to see all the prototypes. It's a name given to all the objects so that a user can see what all, components are there inside that. So underscore underscore proto underscore underscore, we do not use it anywhere in the code. We do not use it anywhere in the JavaScript code. It's just to check that अगर कोई ऑब्जेक्ट है तो उसका प्रोटोटाइप में क्या क्या चीजें हैं. जस्ट टू सी दैट वी यूज दिस. ओके, नाउ लेट्स से ये तो एरे मैंने बनाया था, राइट? सो लेट्स सी दैट इफ आई क्रिएट समथिंग एल्स देन व्हाट्स गोना हैपन. सो लेट्स से आई एम गोइंग टू क्रिएट एन ऑब्जेक्ट हियर. लेट्स से ऑब्जेक्ट 1, and because it's an object, so we know that it should be having some of the elements. So let's say I'm putting here a first name. Let's say I'm putting here Ritwik. Let's say I'm putting here a last name. Let's say I'm putting here it as Raj. Okay, and I'm going to also put one function here. So let's say full name. Okay, and this full name I'm going to give a function, and here I'm going to just print it up this dot first name plus this dot last name. Okay, this is what I have done to create an object. Now that's I've created an object. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to save this. Let's go back to the code and let's write here object1 dot. So when I write object1 dot, it is giving me first name, full name, last name, right? But with these three things, because these three things are already written in my program, with these three things, it is also giving me constructor, has on properties, prototype of, all of these things. From where these things are coming? These things are inside object prototype. Do you remember this? So I told you that if you're creating an object, this will have its object prototype, and in this object prototype, all of these things are placed, what I have shown you here. Okay, all of these things are there. So let's say if I'm writing here proto, you can see here you are getting all of those things as well, right? So this is where your content is getting covered. Fine. Now let's say that I'm creating a function as well. If I go to the back to the program and I'm just creating a function, normal function. So let's say function show, and it's an empty function. I'm not writing anything. Let's save this. Let's go back. And here what I'm going to do, I'm going to just write here show and dot. So you can see here show dot is also giving me some of the function methods. So it's having apply, bind, call, prototype. You can see all of these things are there, right? So all the functions are also having these all things. Where is it? It's in their function prototype, which I've also shown you. Again, you can see here, if any function is there, it is having its function prototype. So we all have seen now that for an array we have array prototype, for object we have object prototype, for function we have function prototype. All of these function prototype, object prototype and array prototype is having some of its methods which is internally provided by me, by a JS engine to me, right? But where can we see this object prototype? Have we ever seen this object prototype? No, right? So let's observe where can we get this object prototype. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is going back to the console, and now whatever I will show you, just have a look. So let's say I'm going to use array1 dot underscore proto, right? And now dot. Okay, let's hit enter, and whatever I'm getting here, whatever things I'm getting here, let's do one more thing. Array dot prototype. Okay, you can see here this one is containing the same thing which is contained by array1.proto, because in my program array is named as array1 and prototype is named as underscore proto, right? So that's why this both is giving me the same thing. Again, we can do the same thing with my object as well. So in this case, what I can do, let's say if I'm writing here arr array1 dot underscore proto with underscore proto. Okay, when I'm doing this, I'm getting something, right? I'm getting something. I have told you that if you go inside the array prototype, then object prototype can be seen, right? And this is what is an object prototype. This is what is the information of object prototype. If you do not have any idea what is it, then let me just show you. So if I write here object prototype, you can see here it's gonna give me the same thing. Can you see? So now I'm sure that array1.proto.proto, it's giving me the object.prototype. So the grandfather is object.prototype, the father is array1.prototype or array prototype, and then the son is the function which you are writing. So that's why I've shown you that if you're creating an array, it goes to prototype array and then it goes to object prototype. So this is the son, this is the father, and then this is the grandfather. So we have some child-parent relationship here, right? We have some parent-child relationship here. So we'll try to understand one more program with inheritance, but right now just understand that. Let me show you one more example. Let's just say that I'm going back here, and here what I'm going to do here is the function is show, right? So let's say I'm writing show, and I'm going to just type here underscore proto. I'm getting this, right? Again, let's say I'm putting up here is function dot prototype, right? So you can see here again the same thing we are getting. The same way how we are done for array, the same way I'm doing for function. Now again, let's say I'm putting up here it as show dot proto dot proto. What I should get here? I should get the object properties, object prototype properties. So you can see here we are getting object properties. If you're not sure, have a look. Object dot prototype. If I do that, we are getting the same thing, right? So this and this is the same. This and this is the same. Okay. Now that we have got this, we have understood what is it. The function will also see, we have done for function, we have done for array, for object also it will do the same thing, right? So I'm not going to show you that, but let's come to the code and let's run it again and let's go back. So now what I'm going to show you here is we have seen for array, we have seen for function. Let's see if I'm writing for object. So we have object 1 and we have proto, right? So this is giving me this part. Okay. Now let's say I'm creating an object dot prototype. So object is already an object. So if I write a prototype, it's gonna give me the same thing. Correct? Now let's understand if I'm creating an array 1, if I'm saying underscore underscore prototype underscore underscore proto, you know what it's gonna give me. It's gonna give me the object prototype, right? It's gonna give me the object prototype. So object dot prototype will be giving me the same thing. Let's do it once again. Now what I'm going to do here is, let's find out what is there inside object prototype. Is there something else? Is the grandfather is also having a great grandfather or not? So let's check out that. If I do this, it's giving me null. That means after object prototype, there is nothing else. After object prototype, there is nothing else. It's just getting ended in this part itself. Okay, so after object prototype, we don't have anything. It's gonna produce null. Okay, that's why we are saying that that grandfather is object. Everything in JavaScript engine is an object. From that object, everything comes in a way. Okay, so that's what is the explanation about. This is what is called as basically prototype chaining. Okay, this is what is called as prototype chaining. Okay, and now we are going to see what is prototype inheritance. Fine. So now let's understand how we are writing the code for prototype inheritance. I'm going to just mention it here. Prototypal inheritance. And I'm going to paste this code here. Remove this code from here. Pasting it here. Removing this part. And giving a break here. Okay. Let me just give it here. And let me just uncomment this. Okay. So we have one object one where we have first name and last name. And we have Raj, right? So let's say what I'm going to do here is, let's say I'm going to create another object. Let's say object 2. And I'm just going to say here that here the first name is not Ritwik. Instead, it's something else. So let's say it's Aman. Okay, it is Aman. And now what I'm going to say, object 2 dot its proto, whatever it is, whatever its proto is, I'm going to just mention it as object. Never do this. Okay, don't do like this. Do not use double underscore proto in your programs. I'm just trying to show you some examples, and that's why I've used here. So I've used here this. Now save this object. Okay, this is object 1. Okay, so now let's print something. So what I'm going to do here is, let's say object 1 dot for or let's do something. Let's go back to the code. Let's save this. Let's go back to the code. Now here, let's say what I'm doing here is, I'm saying object 2. Okay, so you can see here it says object 2 is having the first name Aman, right? And if I do use here dot here, still you can see here that object 2 also fetches full name and last name. Object 2 के अंदर कभी मैंने नहीं लिखा कि object 2 के अंदर there is full name or last name, but still in my console.logic it is showing me that object 2 is having full name and last name. Let's say if I'm choosing full name, what is gonna be? So you can see here it is returning me the whole function. So can I say that it is showing inheritance? Can I say that object 2 is a particular object which is returning full name function which is in their parent, which is in their in a different object, right? Why is it happening? Because of this line. So what I'm doing here, I'm passing this object 1 everything. I'm passing this object 1 ka everything inside this object 2, and that's why in object 2 also all of these features are included. Again, if anybody is asking you that जावा का प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज में जो इनहेरिटेंस टॉपिक है वो क्या जावास्क्रिप्ट का इनहेरिटेंस टॉपिक से इक्वल है? क्या वो यू नो is it the same concept? No, it's not. Because in Java, what is happening? You are using some extend keyword or implement keyword to show inheritance. And there we have the concept of parent and child. But in JavaScript, we can't say that object 1 is parent and object 2 is child. We can't. Here there is no concept of father and child or parent and base class. No. Okay. Here the concept is that we are making this object 1 equal to object 2 ka prototype, and that's why this object 1 ka whatever property is there, it is accessible to object 2 as well. And that's why here you can see that we are getting full name also. Okay. Suppose let's say I want to put down object 2 dot last name. So here you can see it is printing me Raj, whereas Raj is the last name given to object 1, right? Okay, what if I am doing here object 2 ka first name. So object 2 का first name is giving Aman, not Ritwik, because object 2 में मैंने specifically specify किया है कि Aman होना चाहिए first name. So that's why it's giving me that. Now let's understand, if I'm writing here object 2, let's say object 1 dot the function name. The function name is what? Full name. So let's say I'm calling that. Okay, let's save this, and you can see here what is printing Ritwik Raj, right? As per expected, because it is object 1. What if I'm doing object 2? So full name. So what's gonna be? It's gonna be Aman Raj, because object 2 का first name जो है वो Aman Raj है. You can see the code object 2 dot full name. So it's giving me Aman Raj, right? This is what is prototypal inheritance. So this is not equal to your basic inheritance which is explained in your normal programming languages. No, it is not that. It is a little bit different. Okay, and this is what it is. Okay, so I hope this you have understood. I hope you have understood how prototypal inheritance works and how this prototypal inheritance works in your code. Okay, now let's say what I'm doing here is I'm using function dot prototype dot this bind. Remember I created one of the program where I created this bind project, right? I said that how you can write a logic for this bind. So let's say I'm writing here console.log, and I'm just saying here Ritwik. Okay, only this much. And here what I'm going to do, here I'm going to just create one function. Let's say it's show, and it's empty. Okay, now if I save this, and if I just go back to my console, what I have done in my program, I have created one this bind ka function. This bind ka function is having its prototype. Okay, it's having its function dot prototype. That means wherever I'll use this bind, it's gonna get binded with the function, and it's gonna make that as function also, right? So if I go back to my browser, if I go back to my console, here what I'm going to do, let's say I'm writing show dot underscore proto dot this bind. So you can see here it is giving me the answer as Ritwik, right? It is giving me Ritwik. Again, instead what I can do here is, let's say if I'm writing just show dot. So here you can see that you will get this bind. Can you see here? You are getting this bind. What is the meaning of this? The meaning of this is that in the code, whenever you are making a function dot prototype, any function you are making is as function dot prototype, then it will get related with all other functions as well. Okay, so in this function, see, these both functions are separate, but still in my show function, it is showing me this bind. Why? Because this bind is a function dot prototype. That means it's the global kind of thing. So this global function can be accessed by anybody. Let's say if I'm creating one more function, which is show2. right? So if I save this, if I go back to my console, if I just write here show to, again, this is also gonna give me this bind. Can you see? That's a different function. That's a totally different unique function, but still it's gonna give me this bind, which is getting access to console.log Ritwik. So I hope now you understood what is the meaning of function.prototype. Whenever you use function.prototype, it makes that particular function accessible to all other functions. Okay, let's say if I'm not writing any function.prototype here, then what's gonna happen? Then it's not gonna show me anything in my show or show to. So here you can see show dot, and it is not showing me this bind. Fine. So this is what, these are the questions which will be asked to you in your interviews. These are the topics which will be asked to you in your interviews. Okay. And yeah, so this is what I was wanted to explain you, and I hope you got it. Okay. And let's understand what all things we have seen in this video. Okay. So at first we started with our call, apply and bind method. So we understood that if we have an object, right, in which we have a function and we have another object which will be using the same function, so then keep this function separate, okay, and link this object with those functions. How you're going to link it? You're going to use call method. So how you're going to use call? The function which you want to use, write that first and then call it with the object which you want to use. Okay, so then it's gonna get connected and then it's gonna print everything. Is it necessary to have DSA hardcore knowledge for dev? Not hardcore, a basic content for DSA is necessary. Just like you must be knowing how to solve some problems in stack, some basic problems in queue, some basic problems in tree, some basic problems in map. If you know all these basic questions like related to BST or sorting or searching and algorithms and all, you are good to go. You do not have to solve thousands of lead code questions and then get prepared. No. Okay. But yeah, in development, DSA is required. It's not like there's no requirement of that. It is required. DSA is mostly required when you want to prepare for DSA in a more staggered manner, in a hardcore manner. You have to do it when you want to get placed in a FANG company or a product company, because there most of the questions will be asked from DSA and little bit questions will be asked from dev, or maybe what you're reading, what you're understanding JavaScript right now from there. Just small questions, but larger portions will be there from DSA. Okay, so that is what is call. But in apply, what happens? In apply, all the other parameters which are the arguments will be taken inside an array, and if that is an array, we have to use apply. That's the only difference between call and apply. Okay, if you are not using it as an array, then use call method. The another example we used to understand bind method. So we understood that bind is nothing but bind does not give directly calling the method, but it binds the method with one of the object and sends a copy of the method inside that object, and then we call that copy of method. When we call that copy of method, it calls that particular method. So this is what is your bind method, and to use bind method we have written the polyfill also of that, which is here, and we understood how to write this particular polyfill of bind, which was named as this bind in our case, right? So let's understand one more time how this was explained, right? So first of all, if we look at the program of bind, what did we do? We actually binded the full name function with our object, which is person, with some values, with some parameters, right? So we need to make sure that in bind function, this bind predefined function, the first argument should be the object name and the another argument should be the all arguments, all the other left out arguments, right? That's what we need to understand first of all. The second thing which we need to understand that if this bind function is there, it should get access to all other functions as well. To do that, we have to use function.prototype. So we used function.prototype.this bind, and then we gave it this function, and then Then we return one function, because obviously bind method is returning one function, and that's why it is getting called, right? So it should return one function, that's what you've done. But it should return one function with the argument, because while it is returning, a person can, or a user can put some argument here. So this argument should also go here, and that's why we have given here this argument args2. Okay, fine. Now, as we know that whenever we are using this bind, whenever using the bind function, the first argument will be the object and the next argument will be the arguments. So that's why we are keeping only one argument here, which will be divided into two parts. The argument part 0 will be containing the object part, and the other part will containing the params. Now this parameter is also the parameters which will be coming here, and also the parameters which will be coming here. So we have the parameters which will be coming here named as params, and the parameters which will be coming here is named as args2, right? And because these both are parameters, we have put it inside an array, and because we are using array, we have changed this call to apply. Okay, and also in the args function, because the very first element is an object, the next elements has to be arguments. That's what we have done here. Args dot slice 1. So args leaving the first element, leaving the 0th element, all other elements are to be considered as params, and that's what we have done here, right? So this was this bind ka logic, right? The polyfill for bind, and then we have understood what is currying. So in currying, we have understood that it is a technique of evaluating function with multiple arguments into sequence of functions with single argument, right? So whenever a function, instead of taking all arguments at one time, it takes the first one and returns a new function that takes the second argument, and it returns the third function with the third argument, and it goes on. So if a function is there, it will have only one argument, and then it returns the another function with the another argument, and then it returns the another function with the another argument. So if any kind of questions in interview will be asked like this, you have to answer that this will be solved by currying, and currying is something which can be written in only one line itself by the use of arrow functions, and we can get the output of this, right? Currying can be done in two ways. We have understood in bind way and in closure way. In bind way, we have understood that if we write a program in a similar manner, we can pass the values anywhere, either in this way, or either we can pass the values down itself. It's gonna work. Now, because there are different ways of passing it, that is why it is also a currying method, currying concept in bind method. Currying concept using closures, we also have understood using this example, right? So we have one closure here in which we are passing one argument, and in which in nested function we are passing second argument, and which we are calling one here, it's gonna call, and it's gonna print the answer. Similarly, we have seen prototypic chaining. We have understood what is the father, son, father, and grandfather. So we have understood for everything, whatever we create, we have an object prototype. So we have function, it will have prototype function, and for that, the parent of that function prototype is object prototype. Again, for object, we'll have prototype object. For that parent, it's having object prototype. For array, we'll have array prototype. Array prototype ka father is object prototype. So everything's prototype father is object prototype, and after that there is nothing. So after that there is null. There's nothing after that. Okay, so after object prototype it comes. After that you can't go anywhere because there's nothing after object prototype. So even if you create an array, even if you create an object, even if you create a function, we will have to have a object prototype of that. If it's an array, array prototype. If it's a function, function prototype. It's an object, object prototype. Prototypal inheritance is something where we achieve inheritance, but not in the same manner how it is achieved in other programming languages, because in other programming languages we have a parent and child relationship, but here we don't have a parent and child relationship. Instead, we have two objects. In between two objects, we provide a relationship. So that relationship can be done like this, but we do not use this. Don't use this way to do it. There are multiple ways, other ways to do this. So we'll try to see in the next sessions how we can do it. But yeah, object2.proto equal to object1. That means object1 is completely coming inside object2, and now object2 can access object1 ka property also. So that's why object2 dot full name will give you the answer as Aman Raj. And using this bind also, we have understood how it is working, right? So that's all about today's session, and I hope you have understood a lot of things, right? Because we have seen a lot of things today, right? Hi Milind, I love making web apps, sites. I love learning new framework. I made lots of projects, apps and professional sites, but company hiring a raw people who knows DSA and having aptitude so that they can mold as they need by training. So I am confused. What should I focus in my final year? Dev, making project and learning stack, or lead code? Milind, in a way, both are important. And I think in the tips and tricks part 1, part 2, if you have not seen my cracking interviews playlist, go ahead and watch it. I've told that there, that if you have understood how to create websites, if you understood how to use frameworks, if you've understood how to deploy a particular website somewhere, right, publicly, if you know all those things, then go ahead and jump into DSA. Okay, why I'm telling you to move into DSA and solve lead code questions? Two things. First thing, you never know whether you will do good at DSA or not, whether you will be very efficient in solving those lead code questions or not. Okay, because it can happen that websites are your part. You enjoy creating websites, you design websites, you are very fond of it, right? So you must be able to do it very efficiently, but maybe it will not happen the same way in DSA. Correct? So you'll get a closer that, okay, my particular way is to go with websites designing, right? So you'll get an idea. But suppose if you are doing very good in DSA, if you are solving every question in lead code, any which ways, whatever you have learned in your designing websites, the frameworks and all, it's gonna get used once you will get inside a company. Not even that, in your interview also they are going to ask you about that because you have used it. So it's a win-win situation, right? Second thing, let's say if your DSA is not working and you're not getting any job by using DSA lead code question solving and all, so it's a waste of time, right? You will think that I have spent 3-4 months in solving lead code questions, but still I'm not getting inside a product based company. You will have a backup. What is the backup? You know front-end development, you know how to work with websites, and once you know those things, you will be getting a starting package of 5 to 6 LPA once you go inside a front-end development part. So you have a backup plan as well. So it's never late. You can go ahead and learn DSA, start solving lead code questions if you're satisfied with all your front-end part. If you're satisfied with web part designing and web development, website designing, right? Go ahead and solve lead code questions. Both is going to help you in one or the other way. So there's no problem in that, right? So that's all about today's session, guys. I hope this was the last part of Advanced JavaScript, and I hope I've covered everything now. Debouncing and throttling, let's see if I can cover it in one of the sessions, but not soon. Let's see when we are going to cover that, and let's see if I am getting some of the sample papers or sample interview questions from somebody, then I'm going to discuss that as well in one of the sessions. Okay, so I'm going to do that as well. Please join the Telegram channel, because this Telegram channel you will get an updated notifications about all the educators when they're coming live and when by which topic at what time. Everything will be updated here. So please do join the Telegram channel. The link is given in the description below. Okay, and also please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is CodeBeyond, right? Could you tell future session syllabus? Yes, Milind. So future sessions, I'm going to take Bootstrap. Just after half an hour, I'm going to start Bootstrap. Bootstrap will be continuous. I'm going to complete the whole complete Bootstrap I'm going to do. And jQuery will be there 1 or 2 sessions, because jQuery is now deprecated. Like, it's like nobody is using it. So just to give you an understanding of one framework of JavaScript, which is jQuery, I'm going to take one topic in that. And we are going to also start Tailwind CSS. Okay. And once Bootstrap will complete, we're going to start React. This is the syllabus for now. Okay. If any changes will come, I'll update you. But this is what we have planned till now. Okay. So again, I'm repeating: Bootstrap, jQuery, Tailwind CSS, and React. This is what is in plan. Front-end playlist is gonna get completed after that. There'll be no sessions after that. Okay. So if you want something else, please put it down because I need to add that. Okay. So if any time will come, I can add those frameworks of whatever you want. I can add those as well. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is CodeBeyond, and also please like and share because more and more number of people will get to know about this. So it'll be really good. And yeah, so I'll meet you really soon, which is at 6 p.m. We are going to start with Bootstrap and we are going to understand what is it. Okay.